Well, here I am in John Groats, the day after completing 1,000 miles cycling from Land's End to John Groats, and I'm quietly proud, but actually it hasn't sunk in yet. And in this slightly random B&B type guest house I'm staying in here, there's this very detailed and quite large map of Great Britain. And it's when you look at that and you realise what a ridiculously long way it is to cycle solo and unsupported. And at some point it will hit me, but what feels strange is that for the first time in 13, well, this would be 14th day if I was going to cycle, I don't have to put all my kit on, sort my kit out and get ready to cycle 70, 80 or 90 miles in all sorts of weathers and conditions. And I've had all sorts of weather. I've had the first 4 days it varied. I had two really quite unpleasant days. Yesterday, my last day, it was pouring driving rain. It was a few degrees above freezing, and this sharp northeasterly, bracing and unpleasantly, unwelcomingly strong northeast wind. Now, my Celtic friends, my Welsh and Scottish friends, have all quoted that old saying, "May the wind be at your back," which is lovely. The wind hasn't been my back, it's actually smack bang in my face, because most people do the end-to-end cycle ride. They do it from Land's End to John Groats, not from John Groats to Land's End, because the prevailing southwest winds in this country, well, they haven't prevailed at all. And I've been hit for the last week and a bit by varying degrees of strength, sometimes very ferocious northeast wind, which is really hard when you're carrying all your own kit. I had about 14 kilograms of kit, and even certainly when you're carrying injuries and going up hills, and certainly mountains, as I have been over the Cairngorms and all ski areas, lots of ski areas in Scotland. It makes it a real challenge, and when you've actually got to pedal downhill to be able to go downhill when the wind has been that strong. But that said, it's over, it's done. I'm really looking forward to, actually, I'll appreciate sitting in a car, on a train, in a plane, and enjoying that, and not sitting on a reasonably hard or very hard saddle. I actually had to swap my saddle from the race. I got a race bike from the race saddle, which is, a lot of people say, a cheese cutter. It can be pretty hard because the roads when I got to Scotland are so scenery is lovely, but the roads don't match. They're rough and they're hard, and they really give your undercarriage a pounding, enough to put you off social duties for weeks. So I've got a gel sports tourer saddle now, and the difference is most noticeable. I've had some low points. The low points being, I think, sometimes it's down to bike and body mechanics, and it's particularly the body mechanics. And on my 5th day, I'd had this awful day where I'd cycled 85 miles in gale force winds through country lanes that were rivers, come big ponds, and my brakes had failed in the last 15 miles. I'd be coming up against these massive junctions, and to give way in 50 yards, there's not a hope, because I have no control over the speed of my bike. And we'd just come to these junctions where there were cars coming, and I had to just improvise and veer off at odd angles to avoid having a major, probably a fatal crash. And on the 5th day, my left knee in particular suddenly got really sore, and so much so, and you know the story if you've been watching the videos, and the first hour and a half was agony of cycling, and I sort of persevered and it got slightly better, because the flat plate in my left knee was nipping the nerve every time I did a pedal revolution. As you can imagine, I'm doing thousands a day, so that kind of hurt a lot. And a dear friend of mine, Amanda Clark, who I was staying with, arranged for me to see a local physio. She didn't know, but she sort of found was open, and he came along, sort of squat, gruff man with a face and manner to match, and he suddenly found the issue, and he said, "Oh, got it." He said, "Look," stood back, and went, "Functionally, you're fucked." Ta-da! I said, "Isn't that great? I found it. So you've got." I said, "Well, that's not an option. Ease up on the charming bedside manner." And so he did some strapping and showed me exactly how to do it to help support my knee so the flat plate wouldn't nip the nerve. And the result of this type of strapping, he showed me about 2 or 3 days later, it was causing problems with my lower quad muscle. I got severe shooting pains there. At one point, one pain was so bad, bout of pain was so bad, I actually closed my eyes, winced, took my eyes off the road, clipped the curb, came crashing down on a verge, but then bumped into some lovely people who were passing, inviting me for tea and homemade flapjacks, and then all was well. That was the low point. And every morning, as the trip got on, I would sometimes take an hour and a half, if not longer, to really get my knees, in particular my quads and muscles, warmed up. I didn't push it because I didn't want to lock my knee up or anything else like that. And the weather sometimes wasn't brilliant. And obviously I've gone through, about to go through 2 lots of brand new brake pads, a rear cog set, and I've just gone through a front cog set. And the cables are stretching and everything else. And even now the new chain, I had a new chain put on before I came on this trip. That has stretched, so I've really put my bike through a lot, and my body. But that was a low point. But by the way, I will say this, that when you're dressed in sort of cycling gear, my bright high-vis yellow jacket and my sort of long winter cycling leggings, you do notice that people look at you, regard you sometimes lovely, even if you go in and you smile when you walk into cafes, restaurants, places of no repute, nunneries, wherever. They do look at you a bit oddly. There are no two ways about it. And I think that Lycra in this country is not quite socially and culturally as acceptable as we would hope. Even if you are doing Land's End, John O'Groats, and you're loaded down and you look as if you're doing a trip, people look at you as if you're sort of wearing a mankini, an unusual facial expression. So, obviously work needs to be done on that. But the high points way outnumber any few low points and injuries I've had. And they include some of the beautiful scenery. Sometimes I haven't been able to see because the conditions haven't been great. But some of the scenery, and particularly up in Scotland, the Grampians, the Cairngorms, and the single road to Altnahara, and when I was staying with one family just southwest of Inverness by this beautiful loch, and some of the people I've met, the old guys in the late 60s are doing it because they want to do it because they've lost mates, close friends, and so they're doing it on their own, and unsupported on quite old bikes with old leather strip saddles. These old leather saddles are about 80 years old, that are on metal springs, and including the man I met who has been married for 50 years this year to Betty. That's Dave, he's from Yorkshire, they're both from Yorkshire, who has to take rat poison, or a form of rat poison, every single day, as well as do hundreds of press-ups, sit-ups, because of a blood issue he has, otherwise his blood will clot. And the other people I've met doing trips and expeditions, in fact, had dinner, sort of celebratory dinner last night with 2 guys, Rob and Phil from the West Country. And Rob, the younger of the 2, his father died from cancer, and Phil was one of his father's closest mates, so they vowed to do it for that reason. And it's that sort of motivation. There's sometimes no grand reason, grand design. It's the same. I wanted to do it principally because I wanted a pleasantly hairy-chested adventure to test myself physically and mentally, and see how. I didn't know what was going to happen. You just can't predict. And then I'm also raising money for charity too, Acorns, a charity for terminally ill children, as well as Kidscape, which is an anti-bullying, anti-abuse charity for children as well. And so please, there's an expectation, but if you want to stick some money in the coffers for one or both of those charities, then that would be really kind, and it's always greatly appreciated. And I think it's the people I've met and some of the scenery I've come across. And actually now would be the time for reflection, because I don't have to think of logistics and achieving an objective. And I proved something to myself, and it's good to do that. And I think I've said to everybody that I wanted to do a challenge like this that would challenge me mentally and physically before I get too old, too crumbly, and too random. Now, some may say, and certainly my chiropractor will say, well, actually, it's too late on all cases. But I've done it. I'm really chuffed, and I've also been blessed by so many lovely comments, phone calls, text messages from you. That means a lot. People I didn't expect them from, and that has touched me hugely. And the generosity of Amanda Clark and her housemates in Lancashire, Joan Allen Fraser in Edinburgh, and the Amy's family at their converted bothy just southwest of Inverness, who put me up and fed me well and charmed and entertained and looked after me royally for 3 nights over the last week. That meant a lot as well. So here's to the next adventure, whatever that might be. Thank you very much.